With me to review them are the political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and broadcaster Pete Price. Welcome to both of you. Nice to see you both. Lots around in the papers, but one image or one person features on a number of them, Kevin, doesn't she? This is Holly Willoughby, because of this awful case against her. The Daily Express headline, typical of a number of the papers: man charged with hitman plot to kill Holly Willoughby. Because a man's been charged, we can say very little about it, but a lot of sympathy for Holly Willoughby in this situation. Absolutely, a really shocking story. The Prime Minister yesterday even chipped in with his thoughts and good wishes to Holly and her family, and it's a completely shocking story. Obviously, she wasn't on the TV yesterday or the day before as this incident emerged, and been obviously thoughts with her and her family, because it must have been a pretty terrifying experience.
The awful thing about it is we can't talk about it, we know that, but I've experienced it. I had, and the police were involved, and it's all put to bed now, but I had two stalkers, a man and a wife. She was stalking me, he was stalking me, and they didn't know they were doing it, and that went on for 2 years. So I can relate to anything that could happen, so just sending love to her. Yeah, difficult time for her. Pete, you wanted to take us on to the Mail's front page. Their headline is Menopause Madness. So explain this to me. It's incredible. Dozens of councils, universities, police forces, fire service have talked about the menopause policy. The Mail can reveal it. It was criticised, further erosion of women's rights, but they're offering help for men who have bad sleep and are suffering with menopause. Well, I'm sorry if that's all they can put on the front page of the news. I just think it's ridiculous. Woke has gone absolutely overboard. Every one of the three people around this table, we've all got our problems to deal with. So do we go public and do we say, this is what's wrong with me, that's what's wrong with him, that's wrong? What are they trying to achieve by having this? It's incredible. And why are the fire service and the police and everybody doing it? Yeah, we don't have the full details. Certainly I haven't on this bit of the front page I can see here, Kevin. I mean, obviously, is it a sense, do you think, that there are some policies to be sympathetic towards women going through the menopause, and they feel that they have to make a nod towards any men that are having similar symptoms, even if they're not actually, obviously, menopause related? Yeah, I mean, it's one thing saying that men who are experiencing issues like sleeplessness or maybe age-related conditions, but to try and lump it in with menopause when it's not a proper medical condition as far as men are concerned. Obviously, for women, it relates to a very severe drop in hormone levels. Men don't go through that. So I'm not entirely sure why they feel the need to call it the male menopause, because, as I say, even the NHS say this is not a medical condition. Why put it in place? What are we achieving? Another way to skive off work? I don't understand what the story's about. That's what upsets me. I can absolutely understand why women would be very annoyed at this. It's almost like men trying to sort of get on the back of their own condition. It's a very strange. I think it's get on with work and stop worrying about the camera. Stop worrying about things. OK, we'll better crack on with the paper review. Get on with our work. Let's turn to the Scotsman next, Kevin, because obviously the fallout from yesterday's by-election result, which Labour stormed, didn't it? It's taking the Rutherglen and Hamilton West seat from the SNP in style. What's the Scotsman's take today? Yeah, well, obviously the fallout is pretty severe for Humza Yousaf, who is the relatively new SNP leader. He only took over 6 months ago after Nicola Sturgeon stood down. Obviously, it's a hammer blow for the SNP. I mean, I think most people expected Labour to win that seat, given the various circumstances surrounding it, but it was the scale of the victory. It was huge, 20% swing away from Labour, away from the SNP towards Labour. And if that were replicated at a general election, which is coming next year, then Labour would sweep the board almost in Scotland, and that's unlikely to happen, but it does indicate that the SNP are on course to lose a lot of seats. And obviously then the leader, Humza Yousaf, comes under pressure as a result. His strategy at the moment is to keep independence in the forefront of the public eye.
I think a lot of people are now saying actually maybe park that, focus on things like the cost of living issue, because that actually affects people right now. Maybe independence is one for the future, and clearly the evidence of the result in Rutherglen on Thursday is that voters, I think, are looking for a little bit of a change of approach from the SNP as well. But there's no doubt he was already under pressure before. His leadership has got off to a pretty ropey start, a very difficult position to be fair to him that he took over in. But it's their party conference next week as well.
Yeah.
It was Labour next week, SNP the week after, and he's going to come under an awful lot of pressure about his strategy, how he's going to fix it, because as I say, at the moment they're on course to lose 20, 25 seats potentially.
But isn't it interesting that you two are political animals? I'm not a political animal. We all know that Labour are going to win. It's common sense that they're going to win, because so why all these pundits and polls and everything and dissecting every politician? We know it's going to happen. It's got to happen because we need a change.
We've got to keep it interesting.
Oh,
We don't know. We don't know.
The job.
We don't know until we know.
Sorry,
You don't know until you know. I think that's the key thing. Everything can change. You just never know what events will happen that could change things. But you're right that at the moment they're far ahead in the polls. But they would say we can't be complacent. Things could change. Anyway, let's move on to the Mirror, shall we, Pete? And here is a headline about COVID.
Yeah, of course they're looking at all the problems with COVID and trying to sort it out. What bothers me about the whole this is about the children. COVID disaster to scare kids for 20 years. They were saying that children should be allowed back to school when they were opening restaurants, etc., etc. Their argument might be that children can spread disease quicker, or the COVID quicker. What bothers me about the whole situation, every country in the world did not know what they were dealing with. And yes, we've got to find out what happened and learn from that. But what bothers me is about this story and the whole thing is nobody knew what it was about. It was a scary time for everyone. Now, you schooled your child.
Yeah, our eldest was in primary school at the time, and we'd never want to go back to that again. But you're right, it was a very confused time. People didn't know how severe it was. We were all very scared. And I think when the schools closed, as I recall, at the time, I think people were thinking, well, it's probably a sensible precaution. But the longer it went on, and it became more apparent that some schools were able to cater for home learning, others weren't, and particularly poor kids really, really suffered as a result. Maybe didn't have the technology at home to allow them to
And not just
to
the
learn.
education that can be affected, but mental health.
Mental health,
yeah.
and I think the repercussions, I think we'll be feeling it for years.
Without
years
any,
to come.
without
Yeah.
any
So I think
shadow of
it
doubt.
But you're making the point that we didn't know what we know now.
Yeah, but also the
then.
people that made the decisions didn't make it for any other reason, in my humble opinion, than they were worried and fearful for people. It really was a terrible time. We should never forget when we look back and start blaming people. It was, and then you heard New Zealand had a better way of doing things, but then that came back to bite them. So it was a terrible time.
Yeah, I think there's
and
important lessons to be learned.
absolutely,
for sure.
and maybe this inquiry will throw up a lot of those lessons. We'll wait and see. You'll be back again several times. But at the moment, Kevin and Pete,
It's only
nice to
3
see you.
times, 2 more times.
2 more
It's not
times.
several. Won't have us
I
all
was
on.
exaggerating. I was excited about you coming back. You put me in my place. Very well put. But thanks both very much indeed. I'll see you in an hour.